For many indigenous cultures, land means more than just an economic asset. It encompasses culture, history, and values. Similarly, for many indigenous Canadian cinemas, land means more than just the location where the story takes place. More importantly, land witnesses and carries the history of the unfairness and inequality its people have suffered from settled colonialism and systemic discrimination. In this video, a specific example is the land of the Mohawks of Kanisatake, which witnessed the land dispute between the Mohawk tribe and the Canadian Army. Therefore, in the context of Canadian cinema, the land of Mohawks of Kanisatake represents an important history of fighting for indigenous rights and celebrates the people who stood up in this historically significant event. In this event, protests were triggered by plans to build a golf course and townhouses on the land of the Mohawks of Kanisatake, including a burial ground, which is a disrespect to the Mohawk people, as they always have a deep and abiding connection to their ancestors. A peaceful protest eventually led to barricades being constructed by members of the Mohawk tribe and the Canadian Army, with everyone pointing rifles at each other. The standoff lasted 78 days. In the film Beans, through the coming-of-age perspective and the youth experiences of the protagonist nicknamed Beans, we can take a glimpse at the history of how indigenous people have fought for their rights and their beliefs. When the government and the intruders try to take the land away and build commercial projects on their ancestors' burial ground, it unites not only the Mohawk adults, but even the Mohawk teenagers and kids to defend their land and protect their heritage. Different from the fictional characteristics of Beans, Kanisatake 270 Years of Resistance is a documentary that more objectively demonstrates the events that happened in 1990. This documentary is significant as it tells an indigenous story from an indigenous point of view. Thus, in both these films, land is not only the location where the stories happened, but it's also the recurring element of these films. People unite and fight together because of this land, and the spirit of equality and freedom is also inextricably connected to the land. In conclusion, land in indigenous Canadian cinema represents more than just the location where the story takes place, but also carries out the spirits of the indigenous people who live on the land. As a community that's oppressed and impacted by settled colonialism, a voice from their own viewpoint is especially important and meaningful. Among many of those stories told by indigenous filmmakers in order to commemorate historical events, land inevitably becomes the most powerful medium and vehicle for such stories. Therefore, we can come to the conclusion that land is always there in indigenous Canadian cinemas to play its unique role, historically, culturally, and spiritually.